This week on the Brody File, we're on Capitol Hill. And move over, men. Let the congressional ladies take over. Maybe something will get done.
There's so many times I've been in a discussion on a bill or policy where if the women weren't in the room, it wouldn't have been an adequate solution.
Plus, fighting radical Islam. Is Congress up for the fight? Newt Gingrich weighs in.
This is not the Rotary Club. This is not the Boy Scouts. This is not the 4-H. I mean, what binds these people together is a particular belief in a vision of Islam as the dominant governing system of the planet.
Also, showing Christian compassion in a toxic partisan atmosphere.
There is a way to be able to disagree with people and still be able to honor God in the process.
Hey, if Disney World is the happiest place on earth, well, we've come to the most dysfunctional place in America. The Brody File's Capitol Hill Show is next. And welcome everybody to Capitol Hill, the Brody File, on location from the nation's capital. We are glad you are with us. Look, we're going to devote this next half hour to a lot of different aspects up here on Capitol Hill, and we want to begin with a very interesting story, and one that Jennifer Wishon, aka Jenny in the B block, who is now in the A block, is going to explain. We're talking about women here on Capitol Hill.
It wasn't that long ago that about the only way a woman could get into Congress was if her husband died in office and she was appointed to finish his term. Jeanette Rankin of Montana became the first woman elected to Congress in 1917, 3 years before women won the right to vote. It would be another 15 years before voters put a woman in the Senate. Hattie Caraway from Arkansas won that distinction, becoming the first woman elected to a full term. Fast forward to 2015, as a record 104 women will play a role on Capitol Hill in crafting the nation's laws. Among them, Elise Stefanik, the youngest woman ever elected to the House, and Mia Love, the first Black Republican Congresswoman.
I've never really looked at issues in Washington, D.C. as women's issues. I think women have a different perspective on every issue.
South Dakota Congresswoman Kristi Noem co-chairs the Bipartisan Congressional Women's Caucus. This diverse group finds areas of agreement, such as ending human trafficking, and tackles them like moms checking off a to-do list.
There's so many times I've been in a discussion on a bill or policy where if the women weren't in the room, it wouldn't have been an adequate solution. It wouldn't have been something that would have worked for our country.
My experience has been that women like to solve the problem and aren't as concerned necessarily about who gets the credit. And that's a different way to govern than our male counterparts.
Congresswoman Hahn and Noem also belong to a women's-only Bible study where their faith helps diffuse political differences.
It's the one area we're able to share with each other some of our struggles that we probably would not share with a bigger group or with our male counterparts.
They appreciate and need each other's support.
The other women that are here are absolutely fantastic, and they get it, and we have great relationships.
Despite making up half the population, women are a clear minority on the Hill.
It's really interesting being a conservative woman in Congress, and many times you do feel like you're kind of at the end of the list, if you will. And even when you're the next in line, there's always a guy that is going to be pushed forward in front of you.
What an honor it is for me to be with you after the President's State of the Union.
2 years in a row, Republican women have responded to the President's State of the Union address. But in the Republican-controlled House, men head up all the committees. In the Republican-controlled Senate, just one woman, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, holds the title of chairman. It shows that women still face the challenge of breaking into the men's club.
For a lot of us women, the chances to build relationships with individuals gets a little hard on Capitol Hill. You know, our chance to socialize with our colleagues, for me, certainly isn't going to happen in a bar at night. I'm not going to do that. So my chance to really build relationships with other colleagues is going to be in a Bible study or potentially in the gym. That can end up hurting your chance to become a chairman or to rise to the top of some kind of panel or task force.
Polling shows a majority of Americans, 63%, believe the country would be better off if more women were in positions of political leadership. It's an opinion shared by both women and men across every age group. So why then do women only make up about 20% of the House and Senate?
I think a lot of women just don't feel, like they want to put their family through the trials and tribulations of running for office, and the way politics has become so combative and so negative that I think a lot of women just think, who needs that?
For now, Democrats corner the women in Congress market. 14 of the 20 women senators are Democrats, along with 62 of the 84 women in the House.
Are liberal-minded women more apt to run for office, or are Democrats just better at recruiting female candidates?
I think both is true. I think a lot of it has to do with the way the media approaches a liberal candidate versus a conservative candidate. I think women that are on the left don't have the microscope put on them that women on the right do.
Congresswoman Hahn says Democrats also have more role models. In the House, they're led by Nancy Pelosi, who also served as the first female speaker. Women on both sides of the aisle hope Congress will someday more closely mirror the population. But for now, they're celebrating their record numbers and weighing in on the nation's laws in ways only women can. For the Brody File, I'm Jennifer Wishon.
One of the big topics up here on Capitol Hill, ISIS and the funding to defeat those terrorists overseas. There are a lot of hearings that are going to be on Capitol Hill, not just this week, but in the coming weeks. And the president himself is going to ask for authorization to use military force against the ISIS or ISIL terrorists. We had a chance to speak to Newt Gingrich about the war against radical Islam. Of course, the president won't call it the war against radical Islam, but Newt Gingrich says the president is missing the boat, and here's a little reason why.
But the problem is, unless you recognize this is a religiously inspired, very deeply motivated worldwide movement, this is not the Rotary Club, this is not the Boy Scouts, this is not the 4-H. What binds these people together is a particular belief in a vision of Islam as the dominant governing system of the planet.
Newt Gingrich bringing it strong. If he was a basketball player, we call that taking it strong to the rack, by the way. A little basketball term here on the Brody File. All right, time now for a Brody File commentary about, yes, ISIS and political correctness. Well, look, Newt Gingrich has it spot on. He's exactly right. We're talking about radical Islam, and we are talking about radical Muslim terrorism. Those are three words that the President of the United States just won't use. As a matter of fact, coming next week, the White House is going to convene a summit on violent extremism. That's right, not radical Islamic terrorism, violent extremism, and that could mean all sorts of things. It's interesting. Why doesn't the White House ask the Jordanian prisoner who was burned alive in a cage, ask him, well, you can't actually ask him now. Why? Because he was killed and burned alive. That's right. And here's the question they should ask. Does he think it's extremism? No, he thinks it's terrorism. And the president refusing to do that against ISIS. It has been a problem with the Attorney General, Eric Holder, with this president, Republicans, conservatives calling him out on it. But look, this president is going to do his thing. He's going to do it his way, and that's what we've seen in the last 6+ years. All right, coming a little later, we're going to talk actually to Newt Gingrich about another very important topic, NASA. What has happened to the American space program here in this country? That story coming up a little later from Capitol Hill. And welcome back, everybody, to this special edition of the Brody File here on Capitol Hill. Well, look, when you walk around Capitol Hill, you see a lot of veteran senators and congressmen. There are folks that have been here for a very long time. Unlike millennials who are younger, that 18 to 32 range or so, those folks obviously are just getting started in life. And, the Republican Party is really trying to attract some of these folks into their party. The Democrats have really done a much better job with millennials than the Republican Party. And there is some new information about millennials, which we thought was pretty interesting, as to their belief in God. Take a look at some of these figures. 86% say that they actually do believe in God. However, look at this figure. 58% actually say that they're certain there is a God. So there's a difference, 86 to 58, in terms of belief structure. And then 11% say they just don't believe in God at all. You know, one other thing millennials aren't doing so much nowadays is getting married. That's right. There's a whole different situation now with these folks. They're not taking marriage necessarily so seriously early in life. More on that from the church lady Tracy Winborn, who put this piece together for Caitlin Burke.
Sisters Nicole and Erica Barada look like your typical 20-somethings, just hanging out and having a good time. After earning their degrees, they're working full-time, paying off student loans, and enjoying the freedom of single life.
It's good for me because I like to just do random things. Like if I just feel like going somewhere, I don't have to sit there and ask, like, oh, gotta plan this with someone. I can just go.
I'm able to take the time and really find out who I am and what I want to be.
The Barada sisters are like many in the millennial generation. They say they've got their priorities straight and marriage isn't anywhere near the top of the list. Instead, it's more about getting an education and pursuing their careers.
And I think when you're younger, like in your 20s, I think it's kind of okay to be selfish and kind of just work on yourself, because you're going to become someone as you get older who might be a bit different.
A recent study finds the marriage rate has dropped for years, and the percentage of millennials marrying by age 40 will fall lower than any generation before them. From 1990 to 2010, that rate dropped less than 10%, from baby boomers at 91% to Generation X at 82%. By the time millennials reach 40, it could fall as low as 69%. CBN contributor and economist Stephen Moore says this decline could pose a serious problem.
Marriage is one of the most important economic stimulus to the economy that we could have. This is one of the most important elements to reducing poverty, is keeping marriage rates high and keeping marriages successful.
Moore worries that this millennial trend could mean more children growing up without a mother and father in the home.
The data is unbelievably clear on this, that children who grow up in homes with two parents are very unlikely to live in poverty, whereas poverty rates are much higher in divorced households or households without a father.
The Barada sisters say their Christian faith gives them a more traditional view. While they're saving their sexual purity for marriage, planning a family hasn't really been a priority.
I was never that little girl who, at the age of 5, had my wedding planned, what flowers I was gonna have, what wedding dress. Never thought about it.
Because I grew up watching like the Disney movies, and everyone's like, those girls who watch Disney all want to get married and that's what it teaches them. I kind of always thought as like, I want to be the girl who has the adventure.
Roderick Hairston is the senior pastor at Messiah Community Church in Owings Mills, Maryland. He's also a former chaplain to the Baltimore Ravens and the author of the book Cover Her. He says the church should be concerned with this generation delaying marriage and agrees one of the most devastating effects will be on children.
I think we're at the battle line, and the church has to be front and center, making marriage work, getting marriages healthy, celebrating marriages, so that our children can see that there is a place in our culture and society where marriage really does work.
Roderick believes the benefits of a godly marriage can't be ignored, spiritual, emotional, and even for good physical health.
When a marriage is strong and when it's healthy, obviously anxiety levels go down, which means that your blood pressure is not as high, which means that your cholesterol level is not as high.
Still, the Barada sisters say they're happy and healthy being single. And like many millennials, they're not anxious to change their minds anytime soon.
So definitely, I mean, marriage, there's benefits for it, but being single's great too.
The church, the economy, millennials all woven together. All right, when we come back from Capitol Hill, cooperation. Can Republicans and Democrats just get along? We explore it next. And welcome back, everybody, to Capitol Hill, this special edition of the Brody File. Well, look, if we look very closely, as a matter of fact, yeah, I see some over there and there's some over there. There are poison pills everywhere here on Capitol Hill. The Democrats not happy with the Republicans not happy with the Democrats. And look, I mean, I get it. This has been going on for a while, but there seems to be a much more toxic atmosphere up here today than there was even 5, 10, 15 years ago. And there is a major difference. We talked about this recently with a former Congressman, J.C. Watts, the Republican from Oklahoma, the star running back who sat down with us and really lamented the fact that things are much different up here now.
Today, it is just so antagonistic. It is very much an institution where there's not a lot of relationships. You know, it's tough sledding, and you know, and when I'm on the Hill talking to Republican and Democrat members, I mean, I can't tell you how many members I've talked to on both sides of the aisle that said, "This isn't fun. This isn't what I signed up for."
That interview was done in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and while we were there, we also talked to Senator James Lankford. You know, he's had to reconcile this idea of being a born-again believer and standing firm on his convictions, but at the same time trying to play nice with the other side. It's interesting to see how this compassionate conservative handles things up on the Hill.
There is a way to be able to disagree with people and still be able to honor God in the process. You should be able to just honor people for the position that they're in. He's the president. I should speak with respect, just as I would be treated as a senator, as one with respect. He's not above me. He's a co-equal in our government situation. But I'm going to treat that position with respect, even when we disagree strongly. But I should also be able to disagree with someone in a way that, as a Christian, I should be able to speak about God and His faithfulness and His grace and His forgiveness, and the very next moment be able to disagree on a policy matter, and then to be able to also go back and speak to that person about the grace and forgiveness of God.
Senator Lankford here on the Brody File. All right, when we come back, America's space program. What the heck happened? We were on the moon, and now we can't even get to the moon without Russia's help. Oiva, back in a moment. And welcome back, everybody, to the Brody File, a very special edition of the show here on Capitol Hill. And don't worry, we're not drinking the water from the Potomac. We're trying not to get polluted like a lot of folks up here. One issue that Congress is dealing with is NASA reauthorization. In other words, more money, or at least the same amount of money that they had last year. Congress will approve that again. The president's budget has requested the same amount of money. Congress going to approve it. However, the question is, what are they doing with all that money? I mean, is NASA really viable anymore? And there's a lot of private sector experimentation going on in terms of getting us into space. We took a closer look at that when we paid a recent visit down to Florida and Cape Canaveral.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
1969, America wins the space race by putting men on the moon, and it puts the U.S. on top of worldwide technology for decades. Now, almost 50 years later, American astronauts depend on Russia, of all countries, to get us back into space.
It should be seen as a pretty big scandal that after all the billions we spend every year, we're currently sending Americans into space on Russian rockets. And we literally could not get an American into space on an American vehicle right now.
Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich joins the chorus of Americans asking this question: what happened to America's space dominance? What began as Gemini and Apollo led to the Space Shuttle program, which survived the Challenger and Columbia explosions to send 300 astronauts into space over 3 decades. Now the U.S. teams with other countries to run the International Space Station, but it's a Russian spacecraft that gets our astronauts there. Factors include lack of vision, money, and public support. It led to America falling behind other countries, but NASA employees remain steadfast.
That vision has changed, it's expanded throughout the years, and there are different reasons for it, whether it's economic or political, but at the end of the day, NASA is about exploring.
It's also become about something else: government red tape.
We now have bureaucracies that are so desperate to avoid failure that they both limit the risks they take, and they take far too long to study what's going on, as though they could anticipate every problem. And it's a big problem for us.
NASA maintains the book is nowhere near closed on the space program. They're just tuning up for another big splash. The Atlantis program was around for 26 years, and during that time, it really gave Americans a sense of pride, really proud to be an American. But what's next for NASA? Well, the answer, a mission to Mars. With that in mind, NASA launched the unmanned Orion vehicle into space.
And liftoff at dawn, the dawn of Orion, and a new era of American space exploration.
Orion's December mission proved successful, a test run, if you will, before NASA attempts to send astronauts to Mars sometime in the next decade.
Ultimate goal is to send humans to Mars and return them safe, right? So once we send someone beyond low Earth orbit again, back to that cislunar space or to an asteroid or to eventually to Mars, we will continue to invigorate this country and show that we still are the leaders in space exploration.
Right now, it's not just NASA exploring new horizons. Private companies like Virgin Galactic are also hard at work, designing and testing rockets to take people like you and me up into space. Gingrich brings an even bolder idea to the table. How about using cold, hard cash to reward people for breaking new ground? There's precedent for it. Aviator Charles Lindbergh took home $25,000 for the first nonstop flight across the Atlantic in his Spirit of St. Louis.
We had $1 billion prize for the first vehicle to take people to the moon and keep them there for, say, 60 days. You'd have lots of people. The guys who currently buy football teams would start buying a competition in space.
It makes for a fascinating new challenge as America looks to once again explore uncharted territory. All right, when we come back, one thing to say, Newark, New Jersey. Our Oiva moment of the week, back in a moment. And welcome back, everybody, to Capitol Hill here on the Brody File. All right, time for our Oiva moment of the week. Newark, New Jersey, that's the subject, that's the topic. Oiga Volt, here we go. All right, so look, here's the deal. It's a Valentine's Day special in, of all places, Newark, New Jersey. The folks there say if you're a couple, 2 people, you can come in, Valentine's Day special, and buy a plot of land in beautiful, luxurious Newark, New Jersey for $1,000. That's right, I think it goes for like $25,000, $30,000 normally. You can get it for $1,000. It ain't pretty. As a matter of fact, I remember driving one time up to New York and my daughter went like this. Are we in Jersey? Because it smells, and for sure it smells in Newark, New Jersey, but you can have it for $1,000. Good luck to you. All right, folks, that does it for us here on the Brody File on Capitol Hill. Until next time, have a great week.